This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, facing eviction, a Lower Sackville Santa hopes to stay home for the holidays. Trouble for Theodore, too. The former Halifax icon partially sinks in Ontario. And hot ticket, how a Cape Breton fundraiser is helping parents buy hockey gear for their kids.
Mostly rain tracking in tonight into Thursday with some snow over higher terrain areas. This moves out, then all eyes on Saturday and significant snow possible. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. The Christmas season is known, in movies at least, as a time for miracles. And one Santa aficionado in the province is hoping that's the case and his wish this year comes true. He's being told he has to leave his Lower Sackville home where he's lived for the past 4 years, unless municipal officials relent. Shayna Luck has his story.
Don Johnson's been making Christmas ornaments. He loves the little wood shop attached to his home, a converted garage beside the Sackville River. But he's worried he might lose it. This fall, he and his landlord learned the conversion never had the proper city permit. He has to move out by April, and everything that makes this a home has to be ripped out.
Devastated, absolutely devastated. In the past year and a half, I've put my heart and soul into this place.
The reason is the river. He's learned the city considers his cottage is in a floodplain. Last year, this little river rose in the devastating July floods. Many homes in the area were affected, including this one. Johnson repaired the damage for his cottage and for his neighbors. He's the caretaker for this whole property. And they love him for it.
Neighbors are constantly bringing over food. I'm helping them with things. It is a fantastic neighborhood, it really is.
His landlord says when she bought the property in 2019, she didn't know the permit was missing, and she's fighting to keep her caretaker tenant.
He's great. He acts like a superintendent.
She's applied for a permit, asked the city how to make it right.
It has been arduous, for sure. But I'm just going to see it through to the end.
The city's issued a notice of compliance. Spokespeople said they can't say more because it's an active file. Given the housing crisis in Halifax, Johnson hopes there's some room for compromise.
If I'm willing to take the risk and the landlord's willing to take the responsibility with the housing situation as it is, why not? Why not let me stay here?
If not, this will be his last Christmas here. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia.
Halifax Regional Police are asking for more civilian officers. The force presented its operating budget for next year to the city's police board today. It's up 3% over last year for a total of $101 million. That includes $500,000 for 7 civilian roles. The budget also has money for body-worn cameras to be in place in 2026. The public will get the chance to weigh in on the budget in January before the board's final decision. The provincial government has struck an independent panel to review MLA salaries. The Houston government announced the panel this afternoon. The MLA Remuneration Review Panel will look at compensation packages, pay, benefits, pensions, travel, and constituency allowances. Houston recalled the House in a rare summer sitting 2 years ago to reject the recommendations put forward by the last panel. That panel recommended MLAs get a 12.5% increase. If you rely on Halifax Transit to get around, you may not be surprised to learn that buses arrive on time only 3/4 of the time, and the trend is getting worse. Preston Mulligan reports.
On Monday, Halifax Transit was celebrating the reopening of its Scotia Square terminal. New designated red bus lanes, plenty of new shelters that still aren't quite finished, and lots of staff around to help you get reacquainted with catching the bus downtown. What a lot of regular riders still want, though, is just for the bus to arrive on time.
At one point, I waited for the 3:20 to go to the airport for about 40 minutes, and I was supposed to only wait for 5, and I waited for 4. 340.
I'm taking a bus between Halifax and the suburbs, and I have to wait more often. Like my next bus is in an hour, so it's not very frequent.
Halifax Transit's most recent reporting shows that overall on-time performance is declining. That center bar shows it exceeding expectations, but that was during peak COVID restrictions. It's been getting worse ever since.
Well, the simple answer is that Halifax is just not the city that it used to be.
Evan Trenholm is a transit advocate who routinely rides the bus into the city from Lower Sackville.
Our network was fine 10, 15 years ago for the needs of the population, but it's just not anymore. We're seeing it with buses being stuck in traffic in particular. That's the main reason for the delays and sometimes cancellations.
Trenholm says the bus lanes and new shelters make all the difference for riders and help get people out of their cars. The problem, he says, is it's happening too slowly.
Why aren't we seeing even the baseline, quality of life things like shelters at stops, like pavement at stops even, seating at stops? Why are these not being implemented when there's funding available at different levels of government to get it?
No one from Halifax Transit agreed to an interview. Some of the drivers, though, blame construction and say if and when it slows down, on-time performance will improve. Preston Mulligan, CBC News, Halifax.
Theodore 2, the beloved life-size replica of Theodore tugboat, has partially sunk while in port at Ontario shipyards in Port Weller. In a statement, owner Blair McKeel says Theodore took on water Tuesday night and is now gently resting on the bottom in the mud. The statement goes on to say they're currently working on a plan to refloat the boat. No one was injured in the sinking. Theodore 2 was a fixture on the Halifax waterfront for more than 20 years before it was moved to Ontario in 2021. All right, Ryan, it sounds like we're in for a messy few days ahead.
Yeah, rain and then snow. And we will get to Saturday in a moment, but let's run through this in chronological order because we do have, yes, some impactful weather for Thursday in the form of rain, starting with rain in the morning. Some higher terrain snow, especially Colchester, Cumberland, where we could see as much as 5 centimeters over the Cobequid Pass on Thursday morning. Also the Cape Breton Highlands, maybe as much as 10 to even 15 centimeters of snow from this round coming through. Generally 10 to 20 millimeters of rain for Nova Scotia as that system sails through. Quiet for Friday, cool for Friday, and that cold air will set the table for this next system to come in. A nor'easter as it tracks to our south, and we will see those winds kicking in from the east to northeast Friday night and the snow beginning. And you can see here on Saturday, most of Nova Scotia starting in the snow. Perhaps, depending on the track, a mixed rain for Cape Breton, Guysborough, and eastern areas with significant snow to the west of that line, wherever it ends up. And again, that track is going to be so key. This will eventually taper to flurries through the later stages of Saturday and into Sunday. This is an early outlook. Broad brush. We'll refine this as, again, we get closer because the amounts are going to be so track dependent. But right now, it does look like that messier mix in the east with significant snowfall for a good portion of the province. If you have Saturday plans, make sure you are staying tuned to the forecast over the next few days. It does look good in the 7-day. Beyond this, we'll talk about that coming up.
All right. Thanks for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, CBC News has been given exclusive access to follow a soldier from training to their deployment to Latvia and now to their return home. The CBC's Brett Ruskin has been working for months on this story and has this report.
I came out here first so we could practice setting up.
Master Bombardier Robert Cottrell and a team of Canadian Army personnel fly the Blackjack surveillance drone.
And I'll press a green button and it'll launch.
This training happened at CFB Gagetown in New Brunswick, but all this equipment, each truck, each tent, were soon packed up, headed for Latvia. Same thing for Cottrell and the rest of these soldiers. 4 months later, it was departure day.
Time to say goodbye.
Cottrell is following in the footsteps of 3 generations of his family who served in the military and had their own days like these, saying goodbye to loved ones.
I hope it was as hard for them as it is for me right now.
These troops are part of a build-up that will see more than 2,000 Canadian soldiers in place in Latvia.
Standing shoulder to shoulder with our allied partners right now is incredibly important. If Russia had poked their nose in our backyard in the north, we would want our allies to stand with us.
So this is how part of Latvia looks now, one of the NATO countries that shares a border with Russia. Equipment has been sent, those trucks, tents, and drones from New Brunswick, along with tanks and weapons from across the NATO alliance. Soldiers from many nations living together, cooking together, training together.
Crypto's loaded.
After months overseas, it was time for some soldiers to come home, including Cottrell.
How much are you looking forward to being home?
I'm so excited. So excited. I can't wait to see my spouse.
A spouse who he reunited with later that night and who is now his fiancée. Just one soldier's journey to prepare, deploy, and return from Canada's ongoing mission in Latvia.
And so that's around 9 months, condensed down to around 2 minutes. And again, Cottrell is home for the holidays, but there's hundreds of other Canadian troops who are doing their rotations overseas in Latvia. As this ongoing presence begins and continues to ramp up, it's going to continue to ramp up throughout the year next year. Once we hit 2026, the military says it'll be in a steady state of around 2,200 troops there, all there to try to deter or prevent any kind of advances towards that NATO ally, again, sharing a border with Russia. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Cape Breton's Celtic Colours International Festival has a new short-term board of directors. The 6-member transition board was installed on December 7th at an emergency meeting of the Celtic Colours Society. At the same meeting, the society who runs the festival voted to fire its existing board of directors. The outgoing board launched a class action lawsuit against the society in retaliation, but now has agreed to leave and has dropped its lawsuit. The ferry service between Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia will run for a few extra days beyond the usual end to the season. PEI MP Lawrence Macaulay announced on social media the service will run until the 23rd. There will be 4 round trips on the 21st and 22nd, and 7 and 10 a.m. sailings from Wood Islands on the 23rd, and the 8:30 return from Caribou. The ferry was out of service since mid-September when it crashed into a wharf after returning to the water this month. Poor weather conditions canceled multiple crossings. Well, minor hockey 50-50 draws in Cape Breton are bringing in a lot of money to help with expenses and player registrations. This time of year, the jackpots are big, and it's not only the winners who are cashing in. The CBC's Kyle Moore has that story.
It's the hottest ticket in town. The Glace Bay Minor Hockey's annual Christmas draw is estimated to be $200,000.
There's probably 700,000 tickets in distribution out there right now.
Money raised from the 50-50 tickets, half of which will go to the Hockey Association, mean most of the 600 minor hockey players in the group don't have to pay a registration fee to play.
We've been at it for several years now, and we've got a distribution network passed down from generations to generation. People see the benefits of the draw, what it does for the game, and not only Glace Bay, but other minor hockey associations as well.
Keeping costs down is important because hockey is an expensive sport. Just purchasing the gear to play can cost thousands. Look at this list. From a helmet to your skates and gear in between, along with miscellaneous items for one player, the total cost can hit more than $8,000.
Every year he grows, so he always needs new gear, right? He needs new skates, new everything, right? Every year.
Chris McLean's son is in his final years of minor hockey, but without the help of ticket sales, it would have been a difficult journey.
Oh, it'd be very hard. Even though my wife and I both work, we need that to help pay for his gear. It's a big part of everything.
They get out there and sell the tickets, and they don't have to pay for anything, you know. The gear is looked after, the ice time, and and the whole registration, and all because of tickets.
Noah Macaulay is now a coach in Glace Bay, but much of his minor hockey career was as a goalie.
Pads that I got were $3,000 in store, but we paid $1,000 for them. Chest gear is expensive. Helmets are expensive. It's a lot more expensive than being a player. It helps a lot when it comes to goalie gear.
The big draws for several minor hockey associations in Cape Breton will take place on Sunday. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Glace Bay.
And there's a look at the McKay Bridge from earlier today. Ryan is up next with his full weather forecast. See you in a bit. All right, first we're dealing with some wet weather, and then it sounds like time to break out the shovels for Saturday.
Shovels, snow blowers.
Snow blowers,
yeah.
It's not a dusting.
Not a dusting, not at all. And the first big one, and the fact that it's happening Saturday when I think most folks are probably looking to hit the roads. You know, Friday's the last school day for most kids. So, yeah, we're looking to, I'm sure many folks looking to hit the roads and do some traveling, or maybe it's just some hustling and bustling shopping around. And it will be an impactful day either way. Have a look at our current temperatures out there right now, and you can see, yeah, we're right around, well, 2 to 4 degrees in most cases. A couple of spots near 5, a little bit cooler in the Collegeville station in inland Antigonish County. The wind's relatively light, and they will stay relatively light tonight as this low moves through. And then we're going to be seeing some stronger winds punching in for tomorrow afternoon as that next system does track through. And there's the low, which is working its way kind of up through the eastern parts of the U.S., tapping into some cooler air on the northern edge of that system as that high is helping to funnel that in. And then we're watching this low here, which will move its way across and towards the coast. And then we have another low developing actually along this frontal boundary here. And it's those two lows which are going to be forming and making that nor'easter that we're going to be contending with on Saturday. There's the colder air, which is again still entrenched across Western Canada. Toronto at 3. Milder air in through the south and east, and you can see where that cold air, warm air are clashing here along that frontal boundary, which is working its way in for us. Tonight, temperatures are going to be right around the freezing mark in most cases, bumping up and staying right around 4 degrees for Yarmouth. Everywhere else, temperatures will rise a little bit into tomorrow morning. Note the timeline as we move through tonight. Most of the night tonight is quite quiet. That rain arriving around 2-3 a.m., it appears, for the Tri-County area, perhaps a little bit earlier. And then we're looking at that rain to track in just in time for the morning commute for most of the mainland. There's that wet snow we talked about earlier, higher terrain areas, South Mountain, Cobequid Bay, Mount Tom. These are going to be the areas that do likely see some snow mixing in, but in terms of accumulation, I think it's pretty much limited to the Cobequid Mountains, where we could see upwards of 5 centimeters as that system does track through. Into the afternoon, note even by lunchtime, most of the rain pushing out now towards Cape Breton and the eastern mainland, drying out and maybe even some sunshine into the afternoon for western areas of the province. Now, it looks like rainfall amounts generally going to be around 10 to 20 millimeters. I think that's a pretty good number for most of us, 20 on the high end, most of us probably closer to 10. Now, temperatures for tomorrow, 3, 4, 5 degrees. Those winds will punch in from the northwest into the afternoon. Westerly winds, 20 gusting to 40 for central areas, and will be as mild as 6 and 7 degrees for the south shore tomorrow with the winds in from the south, winds in from the west rather. There are those temperatures for Friday, near the freezing mark. A mostly cloudy day on Friday as that system will be approaching, and we are going to be looking at that area of high pressure just off to the north, and then looking at the snow to begin Friday late evening, more so through the overnight, and some of those heaviest snow bands are looking set indeed to track through the overnight and early morning hours of Saturday. The winds picking up as well as this nor'easter tracks through. Beginning of snow for everybody, and then as this system wraps in the milder air, looks like the potential to change over through ice to rain for Cape Breton, Guysborough, and Antigonish. And again, the track is going to be so key here. If this is further to the west, well, then that mixing line would also be further to the west and include Halifax. That is looking less likely right now. If it shifts to the east, well, then we might get into some of these lighter snow bands here for, say, the western parts of Nova Scotia. The west and east track is what we'll have to keep an eye on with this system. Right now, what you are seeing looks like the most likely scenario. The track near Sable or between Sable and mainland Nova Scotia, which would put us in that heavier snow zone for a good portion of the province, and hence why we are indeed looking at that mostly snow zone here, 15 to maybe as much as 30. We'll nail down that messier mix tomorrow as we get closer. It does look like either way, whatever sticks around will be sticking around right through until Christmas with chilly temperatures. Amy.
All right, thanks for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, Halifax explosion history. Workers at the Irving shipyard find remains of the SS Mont Blanc. Workers at the Irving shipyard, ground zero for the Halifax explosion, have apparently found the remains of SS Mont Blanc. When the vessel and the Emo collided 107 years ago, the blast flattened everything within a radius of more than 2 kilometers. CBC has confirmed workers were dredging the harbor in front of the Irving facility and came up with what is much of what's left of the Mont Blanc. Both Irving and the province turned down CBC's request for an interview. We're at the Bell Tower at Fort Needham Memorial Park, and I'm here with Marilyn Davidson Elliott. You wrote a book called The Blind Mechanic about your dad who was blinded in the explosion. So clearly you have a very strong connection to
Absolutely,
this place.
absolutely, yes.
Well, tell me a bit about what you know about what was unearthed in the harbor.
I know that there were a tremendous amount of large pieces that were brought to the surface, and that they're being stored in Dartmouth. I know that the museums have been involved, and I understand they've been authenticated. And I'm just in a quandary. I just don't understand why the provincial government hasn't made an announcement about this. This is now cultural property. It belongs to the province, and they have a duty to protect it. I also feel that they have a duty to publicly announce this historically significant find.
Why do you think it hasn't happened?
I really don't know. I've heard a few things, but to me, there could be no good reason to withhold this information from the public, in particular out of respect for descendants like me and my family and thousands upon thousands of other descendants and their families.
What do you know about where exactly it was discovered and how?
It was discovered below us here in the harbor at the site where the Mont Blanc exploded 107 years ago. So apparently it would have been driven right down into the harbor bed, and Irving did the dredging. And so Irving went to the trouble to bring the pieces up, and they handed it over to the province. And now we are all just waiting for the province to do the right thing and come forward. Why withhold this information? No good reason.
Well, what do you think should be done with these pieces? What would you like to see happen?
There's a few options. Some pieces may be able to be put into a museum. Some pieces may be too large. Some of the larger pieces could be installed here at Fort Needham, and they would make a dramatic viewing for people. You know, and it would be emotional for a lot of people.
Now, I understand there's also a push to get the area around the shipyards given some kind of special recognition. Can you talk about that?
Not so much that. This particular district that we're standing in right now was originally called Richmond. And after the explosion, it was referred to as the devastated area for decades. And as such, Richmond lost its name and its identity, and myself and a group of historians are working behind the scenes to try, through the appropriate channels, to have Richmond's name reinstated. That's what that is about. So, I mean, we've lost the opportunity to make the dockyard there, where Irving is right now, a memorial spot. Irving's shipbuilding is on that spot, and that happened without any consultation with the public as well. So, you know.
Well, where do you go from here?
Well.
Where do you go from here?
I would implore the Premier and Minister Ritzie to do the right thing and come forward and tell us what has been found and what they plan to do with it.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Amy.
Coming up, with uncertainty hanging over Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump continues to troll Canada. And serious talks are underway for a potential ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Welcome back. Donald Trump has called our Prime Minister a governor repeatedly on social media. He has described Chrystia Freeland as, quote, toxic. And now he is once again suggesting that Canada should become a U.S. state. Katie Simpson looks at the incoming U.S. president's latest jab at this country.
It was 3:23 in the morning when Donald Trump took another swipe at Canada on social media, again needling his neighbor to the north. It begins with a broad and inaccurate complaint about the trade deficit. He describes it as a subsidy, claiming it's around $100 million. It's followed by this. Many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. They would save massively on taxes and military protection. I think it's a great idea. Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill largely brushed off our questions about Trump's repeated quips. Donald Trump keeps talking on social media about making Canada the 51st state. I'm curious as to anyone has any insight as to why or what you might think of that.
So humor is dead. I think to the second part of the question, I think Donald Trump is being humorous, okay?
Trump's digs come during a moment of political chaos in Canada. On top of the turmoil around Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's leadership, Ottawa just revealed part of its plan to try to avoid Trump's tariff threats. He's vowed to impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico unless both countries improve border security. Canada announced it will spend $1.3 billion to make the border with the U.S. more secure. But whether it will satisfy Trump, Republican lawmakers tell me it's anyone's guess.
You're asking me to read the mind of President Trump, and I will say that I support him, and he's doing a masterful job. He's an incredible leader. Will what Canada's doing be enough to prevent tariffs being imposed upon Canada? I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any insight on that, but I simply don't know.
Trump's inner circle has taken notice of Canada's border security announcement. His incoming press secretary for the White House is marking it as a win on social media, describing it as Trump's ability to make change before he's even in office. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
This week, the loonie dipped below 70 cents U.S. for the first time since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. It comes among Trump's tariff threats and turmoil in the Trudeau government. Anise Haydari looks at what a weaker dollar means for our economy and our wallets.
Traveling Canadians say a dollar worth 69 cents U.S. isn't nice.
Just sucks. It's become horrible the past year.
Killing us. And it's just going down, 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 down.
I do remember one time it was at par, but that was a while ago.
That was more than a decade ago. These days...
Well, the dollar is definitely on a tailspin.
Experts say it's about where to expect growth.
It always comes down to the economy. That is the number one biggest driving force of how the dollar moves. So if the expectation is that the U.S. economy and GDP will do better than Canada, money and investment will move there.
And tariff threats from Donald Trump may keep dragging down Canada's dollar.
I actually am worried or concerned, I should say, that it is going a bit weaker yet until we get, some relief on the tariff front or, some better economic news to help support the currency.
After the Federal Reserve cut interest rates in the U.S., Canada's dollar fell even more. A low Canadian dollar can make imports more expensive. Think fruits and vegetables from outside Canada. Though things sold or exported in U.S. dollars can benefit. And for tourism, visitors may get more bang for their U.S. buck.
Those that have U.S. dollars, because this is basically almost free money for them in terms of the increased margin.
Definitely something some Americans notice.
It's great. Clothes, Aritzia's 30% off. It's really good.
As for where the Canadian dollar goes next, there are forecasts it could drop even more to its lowest level in nearly a decade. Anise Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
More than 14 months into a war between Israel and Hamas, there are signs both sides could be close to a deal. The plan, which would be implemented in phases, involves a halt to fighting in Gaza and release of Israeli hostages by Hamas militants. Briar Stewart reports.
Another scene of chaos as a crowd swarmed around a dozen aid trucks in the city of Han Yunis. As a videographer working for CBC News captured these images, gunshots rang out in an attempt to keep people from stealing the desperately needed supplies.
Over 14 months into this war, people have known extreme deprivation, and they need everything from food and nutrition to shelter.
According to local health officials, more than 45,000 people have been killed in Gaza throughout the war. After months of misery, there are now reports that ceasefire negotiations are gaining momentum. Some Gaza residents spoke out, telling CBC News it's time for Hamas to agree to a deal.
They should give the prisoners which they have for Israel and to be a peaceful one this time.
Hamas should be in the war here and sign this agreement
because the situation in Gaza is very bad.
There are reports that if there is a deal, it would include the gradual return of hostages in exchange for Palestinians in Israeli jails.
Bring them back, all of them, now.
Families have been making those pleas for more than a year, only to watch as talks break down.
I mean, Israel is the one.
This time, though, experts say it might be different.
Hamas now is under significant pressure from regional mediators like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, far more than it was only a couple of months ago. At the same time, its domestic popularity is waning quite significantly.
Pressure is also mounting from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who warned there would be hell to pay if the hostages aren't released before his inauguration. But even if there is a deal, there's no clarity on just what becomes of Gaza afterwards. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
A CBC News investigation is shedding light on the use of social media to inflame tensions between Sikhs and Hindus in Canada. And some community members say misinformation is ratcheting up tension in the Indian diaspora. Jonathan Montpetit has more.
Balwinder Singh hosts a local radio show from his basement in Brampton, Ontario. His Punjabi-speaking listeners often call in about Indian politics. And he says he's noticed a recent rise in tensions between Hindus and Sikhs.
I feel unsafe, and many people do.
He thinks misinformation on social media is driving it, especially about the Sikh separatist movement and diaspora.
As if these two communities are separate communities, and people who belong to Hindus, for example, that they should feel endangered by the Sikhs and vice versa.
We examined several hundred posts on X made in November by both critics and supporters of the Khalistan separatist movement. We found that both sides make unverified claims, but posts critical of the Khalistan movement were much more frequently amplified by suspected bot accounts. This post falsely claims Sikhs taking part in a religious event were marching around Surrey, saying they own Canada. The post went viral, boosted by retweets from nearly 500 suspected bot accounts. The misinformation then became the topic of several news stories in India.
Tensions continue in Canada after the recent pro-Khalistani mob attack on Hindu devotees.
Khalistani synthesizers. Brinsley has termed Canadians invaders and asked them to leave Canada.
Daniel Boardman is a journalist with the right-wing National Telegraph. He authored the viral post.
Do some bots retweet me? Sure. But I don't think bots are that significant in the outreach they have.
But Singh says he's worried misinformation will drive a wedge between two communities that coexist peacefully in Canada.
I think that is something very dangerous because, as we always say, that Canada has been known for safety, always.
It's not clear from our analysis who is controlling the bots, but Canada's National Security Committee has said it believes the Indian government uses media manipulation as a form of political meddling. Jonathan Montpetit, CBC News, Montreal.
Judges in France could hand down a ruling as early as tomorrow in a trial that has gripped the country and made international headlines. It centers around this woman, Gisèle Pellicot, seen here on Monday. That's when a sexual assault trial centered around her former husband adjourned. For nearly a decade, while they were married, he admits to drugging and sexually assaulting her and enlisting 50 other men to do the same while he videotaped the crimes. Pellicot waived her right to anonymity, earning praise for her courage and composure. We have a remarkable story now from PEI about a shark attack victim. Not only did Lucas Arsenault survive and recover from a lost leg, the 27-year-old kiteboarder pushed himself to once again reach for the sky. The CBC's Lisa Shing has the details.
That was ugly. Movement, once effortless, now requires every ounce of strength and concentration.
Doesn't look perfect, but it's come a long way.
Lucas Arsenault, the 27-year-old professional kiteboarder from PEI, traveled the globe, winning competitions until May, when he was attacked by a shark while snorkeling in Turks and Caicos.
And he just latches onto my knee, and I could feel, obviously, he's just ripping skin, and the bite strength is so strong, I could hear bones shatter instantly.
Arsenault got another breath in when it brought him to the surface. And then when it pulled him under for a second time, he saw a chance for survival.
I saw the eyes, and that's what allowed me to get out, because I was able to poke his eyeballs.
His family and friends pulled him back on the boat. His girlfriend tried to stop the bleeding using a makeshift tourniquet.
It's almost like your head's just filled with air, like you don't really know what to do.
I'm wondering, like, how is this going to work? Like, I'm dying. Is it any moment? Do I pass out?
None of that happened. Instead, his right leg was amputated. At the time, Arsenault questioned whether he would ever walk again. But with the support of his friends, family, and kiting community and his medical team, he went from a wheelchair to walking with a prosthetic in 10 weeks. And 3 months later, this.
Just gratitude, just happiness.
Is that a normal rate of improvement?
It's exceptional. It's an exceptional story. And then so to observe it, like, I can't say if it's normal or not normal. No one else is kiting with that level of amputation in PEI, maybe even in Canada.
Got the leg going here.
Since then, he's found a new normal. Ways to stay active, particularly key to his recovery. Gratitude.
Pull-ups are nice, yeah, because I'm a few pounds lighter.
And a positive attitude.
If you're going to face a 1,000-pound tiger shark and you come out as I came out, like, you're pretty happy in the end.
And recently, a trip back to Turks and Caicos to make peace and new memories. A fresh start with much more to accomplish. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Mont-Carmel, Prince Edward Island.
A newspaper that serves an Indigenous territory near the Canada-U.S. border is closing after 40 years in business. Members of the community say that in losing the paper, they're losing an important connection with their past. Jorge Barrera has more.
Is this it?
Yep, that's
Volume 1, July 1st, 1983.
After over 40 years, Indian Time, the newspaper covering Akwesasne, an Indigenous territory with over 23,000 residents on the Canada-U.S. border, is closing. Final edition, Thursday.
The American Legion honors veterans November 11th, 2024. As I was standing there and it was freezing out and taking photos, I realized that I wouldn't be doing this anymore. Alex Jacob, Daniel Thompson, they both started this paper.
For the first time since the 1960s, no newspaper will record history in the Haudenosaunee community.
This is of 4 brothers, the Phillips brothers, our local heroes, who served in, I think, one in the Navy, one in the Army, one in Korea, one in World War II, and maybe one in Vietnam. It's our history all right here.
Look at the Mohawk Mothers thing.
Stephen Bonspiel's Eastern Door covers the sister Mohawk communities of Ganawagi and Ganesadage. He worries about the news hole in Akwesasne.
Who's going to come forward to replace that? Doesn't look like anybody, because nobody wants to take on print in this day and age. You know, there's so many things against journalists. They're being attacked, they're being targeted, fake news and all this stuff. Here's the app.
Bert Crowfoot turned Windspeaker into a famed national Indigenous paper in 1990 when federal funding cuts ended 9 Indigenous newspapers.
Whenever an Indigenous voice for the community closes its doors, it's a loss. Look at what's on issue 2 on the cover. PCBs.
Reporter Isaac White has been arrested covering land claims protest, and he exposed election troubles during his time at the paper.
It's a connection to home. I know that my byline will be here forever, so at least, in some small way, I've been a part of this.
But no new editions will continue charting the story of Akwesasne. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Akwesasne Territory.
Canadian airports are gearing up for the busy holiday travel season that kicks off this week. As Stephanie Skandaris reports, travelers are being urged to prepare in advance to better handle the rush.
Toronto Pearson International Airport is still relatively calm, but officials know the travel storm is coming.
Between December 20th and January 6th, we're expected to see just under 2.7 million people walk through Toronto Pearson. So it will be busy in the airport, but we are ready for it.
Staff want passengers to be ready too. They say one way to do that is to use apps like ArriveCan.
My hope is that here at the airport, a lot of our travelers are going to choose to use the advanced CBSA declaration feature on the ArriveCan app. Really speeds things up and lets them answer all of those mandatory questions up to 72 hours before they even arrive at the airport.
Halifax Stanfield Airport is also preparing for a travel surge and wants passengers to be aware of some holiday-specific pitfalls, like remembering snow globes are subject to the 100-milliliter liquid limit.
If you plan on traveling with gifts this holiday season, please leave those unwrapped until you get through security, in case those contents do need to be inspected.
Just one of many tips for a smoother airport experience.
We make sure each person has their own bag, so kids feel more responsible.
I only take essentials for carry-on, but definitely a change of undies and clothes just in case.
Same. Spare knickers, spare pants, spare t-shirt.
Yeah.
Go, because they're going to lose my luggage.
I just make sure there's more liquids. I'm scared of the liquids.
That fear may soon be eased a little. New CT X-ray machines are being rolled out across the country, already in one or more lanes in Vancouver, Ottawa, Montreal, Calgary, and now Toronto.
You no longer have to take your liquids, aerosols, and gels, as well as your laptops, out of your carry-on. Smoother experience, quicker experience. It's a national deployment program, so it's going to be eventually, it's multi-year across the nation on all lanes, hopefully at all the airports.
So passengers can focus more on what matters.
Don't get lost.
Stephanie Skandaris, CBC News, Toronto.
Markets on both sides of the border fell sharply this afternoon after the U.S. Federal Reserve cut interest rates. Now, here's a look at how the markets did as we head to break. All right, holiday season starts, and so does the messy weather.
Yes.
Such timing.
Right on cue. The one positive in this is that it's looking like many are going to get a white Christmas.
That's what a lot of folks like.
It's been a while,
It
right?
has been
Since
a
we had
long
a
time.
widespread white Christmas. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day before we get to the weather forecast, and we'll zoom in here in Shelburne County at a beautiful spot here. This is overlooking Birchtown Bay, Boulder Cove.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Isn't it? Paul, thank you so much for sharing this. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. So many great picks coming in lately. Have a look at the timeline of all this. So here's the wet weather tonight into tomorrow morning with that snow mixing in. Cobequid Pass could see 5 centimeters, but generally, and the Cape Breton Highlands, maybe as much as 10 to 15 there. But this is generally a rain event. Then that system moves out. Then the next system moves in. And you can see Friday night, the snow begins. Saturday, it continues. And this is really what's going to be the nitty-gritty details, or the track of that low and how close it is to Nova Scotia. It does look like it's going to be close enough right now that we see some mixing for Cape Breton and Guysborough, and perhaps Antigonish, even Pictou, maybe even eastern Halifax County, but mostly snow in that zone. And we will be looking at, that snow to taper off then to flurries through Saturday evening into the overnight. And the good news is that low departing. So if you have travel plans Sunday,
they're not too bad?
They're not too bad.
Oh, good.
Some lingering flurries, though, coming in from the Gulf of St. Lawrence across to Cape Breton on Sunday, and maybe even the Northumberland shore, and then cold air moving in, high pressure moving in. And so, yes, aside from Saturday, some really good looking travel days. Cape Breton, keeping an eye on your onshore flurries, as well as the Northumberland shore, both Sunday and into Monday. But Tuesday, Christmas Eve, as well as Christmas Day, even Boxing Day, looking good right now. And you can see how chilly those temperatures will be. So that snow is not going anywhere.
Well, Santa looks happy about the white Christmas.
For sure.
Okay, well, there will soon be a new face on the $5 bill. Canadian legend Terry Fox. That news was announced earlier this week in the federal government's fall economic statement.
In honoring him and his Marathon of Hope, the statement says Fox showed how an ordinary person can make a difference through willpower and determination. Sir Wilfrid Laurier will be moved to the next version of the $50 bill.
That's well deserved for
Yeah.
sure. All right, that is it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.